Hello, friends, and welcome into the Marriage Talk podcast. It is great to have you with us. Thank you for downloading, subscribing, and sharing the link to both the audio and maybe even the video form, because on the Marriage Talk YouTube channel, you can actually watch these episodes, these conversations take place. We'd love to have you check out both versions and share them with other couples in your sphere of influence. Bill Hobson here, along with Jay and Laura LaFoon. And you can dig into their ministry details and events online at jayandlaura.com. And I'm reminded, Jay and Laura, as we start this conversation, that the older I get, the more often I find my mind drifting to these things about legacy. What am I leaving behind? What are people going to say about me when I'm not here? Hopefully it's, at least a little bit decent along the way and not all just he ate all the pizza every time we had pizza. So we're going to deal today with leaving a legacy through your marriage, and I'm anxious to see where you want to go with the conversation.
Well, it's interesting because I do think even younger folks, as you just stop and ponder life and look at maybe your heroes, the people that have left a legacy for you, you do think about what am I gonna leave behind? And a lot of people think it's gonna be money or a wing at the college or whatever. But we don't believe that leaving a legacy involves grand gestures or triumphant moments. Leaving a legacy as a married couple to your neighbors, to your friends at church, to your kids, specifically, leaving that legacy is a daily occurrence. It's something that you do daily.
It's habits that you build into your life that allow you to leave that legacy without even really thinking about it. It's just who you are and what you have incorporated into your life in these habits.
So we're not going to be talking about leaving a wing at the hospital kind of a thing. Even though that's a great legacy, I don't cut that down at all. But it's about leaving a legacy in the lives and the hearts of the people that matter to you most. And that's we've got 4 habits we want to explore today. The funny thing is, most of these we all learned in kindergarten. But
right at the top of the conversation, I'm reminded with a powerful visual in my mind when we talk about leaving a legacy. My wife's parents, who have both since gone to be with the Lord, were married for, I'm going to get this wrong, but it was like 70 plus years. It was forever.
Wow.
Mr. Baker passed away at the age of 99, lived on the same dirt road all 99 years, went to the same church all 99 years. Moved once. I believe he was a teenager and they moved like 2 houses down. And so he was a farmer. And Ellen's mom, Berna, what a great name for an older lady, right? Berna, you don't hear that name much anymore. She stayed at home, raised, took care of the family, and every single day. I don't mean like 3 days a month. I mean every single day. They began their day on their knees on the couch or at the couch with a big prayer list and daily devotions, and then working through this list of every family. I mean, by the time you're 99 and you've got, when a family gathering happens, it's like 65 people. They're praying for everybody. And this is one of those things, when I hear the concept of legacy introduced, I think about, man, first, I am failing miserably in that regard. But B, what a powerful example to be able to kind of draw on. So I know you're going to lead us through some of those things that that honor the Lord and strengthen our marriages, but that's the one that pops into my mind.
You bet. And those are the people that really have that kind of influence because of that daily routine, the daily habits. I'm reminded of a time we were living in a different house than we are now, and we had a living room that was a little more formal and didn't have a TV in it. That's what more formal means. And then we had a family room where we had our TV. And my son and I, he was probably 6 at the time. We were playing some game, and I said, "Hey, buddy, would you go get Daddy this?" And he's like, "Where is it?" I said, "It's in the living room." And he's like, "What?" I said, "Right by my chair in the living room. Can you bring me that book?" He said, "The living room." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, you mean the devotion room?"
Oh,
And because that's where we would have our morning devotions. And, those kind of things are what we're talking about.
yeah.
That it was second nature for him to think about that room being the room where we have devotions, because every morning that's the quiet room. That's where we don't have a TV, no distractions. And it's really about fundamentals. And that's, I'm reminded, I'm a sports guy, you're a sports guy. John Wooden, one of the, if not the greatest college basketball coach ever, 10 national championships. I'm constantly reminded of what the first thing he taught incoming freshmen to do:
Tie their shoes.
tie their shoes. And and I remember Bill Walton talking about how incredulous he was over the fact, because here I am, an All-American. Here I am, I've proven I deserve to be here, and you want me to learn to tie my shoes? And Wooden's logic was very simple. If you don't tie your shoes right, you're going to get blisters. And if you get blisters, you're not going to be able to play in a game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, but those, and we look at those fundamentals of life sometimes and go, that's simple, but we're not doing them. We're not making them a part of our routine on a daily basis. So we've got 4 fundamentals.
That does kind of lead us right into that first fundamental, because it's something that I think we all think we do, or that we are, but when you really listen to yourself, you're not, and you're not practicing this fundamental. And that first fundamental is to be polite. Those things that you say, please and thank you, not only to people, we find it really easy when we're out and about in a store and a sales clerk says, well, have a nice day. And we go, you too. We think we're being polite. But when you sit around your dinner table and you ask for the butter to be passed, do you say, could you please pass the butter? And then when it's passed, do you say, thank you?
It's more like, yo, pass the butter,
or, hey, I need the butter.
Yeah.
And so it's that tying of the shoe, like Coach Wooden, do you think that you do it? You think you know it. You think I'm way above that. But are you really practicing that politeness, not only in your marriage relationship, but with your family, and then with people out in this?
Are you modeling it? And see your kids, again, and this is who we're leaving our legacy for the most, at least in my mind, is our children. They're watching us every day. Well, daddy says please and thank you to the store clerk, but he doesn't say please and thank you to mommy. What's that all about? And so those kind of things are very, very simple, yet profound in their impact. In fact, I know many times when a store clerk says to me, have a nice day, and I pause and I look at them and I say, you have a nice day too. It's almost like they're startled, because normally it's just that's just something we have to say here at the store,
Right.
No one really acknowledges it. It's just part of our protocol. So it's being polite. My favorite one is Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, my pleasure.
My pleasure.
My pleasure. Well, and if you spend any unhealthy amounts of time on Facebook, and you're in the video section, the Facebook watch thing, it seems like the most frequent content in the little video clips that you watch are fights in stores and restaurants, and people screaming at things and crawling over the counter at Burger King and starting a brawl and all that. First of all, I don't really understand how any of that works and why they're not all in jail. But I also have been reminded time and time again that we're not on a broad scale, we're not a polite culture anymore. We are a crude culture. We have somehow inserted the F word into places where it doesn't fit in any context whatsoever, but it's everywhere. And so acts of, or moments of, or words of politeness almost stand out like they have a neon light over the top of them. And people are like, oh, wait, he just held that door for me and said, have a great day, or God bless you, or something, because it's sadly, it's all too rare. So as you're pointing that out, I think it's even more poignant when those moments happen.
And as Christians, what a simple way to be salt and light in a world that desperately needs salt and light.
Yeah, we got a lot of vinegar out there. What's number 2?
Number 2 is to be punctual. This one again is something that people probably just don't even, I walk to the beat of my own drum. I just do, you know, they don't think about what they're communicating when they're perpetually late.
Mm.
Because when what you're communicating when you're perpetually late is that my time is more important than yours.
Yeah.
It's all about me, which is the culture that we live in. It's all about me. And so when you are perpetually late and not punctual, you are saying to the rest of the world, you don't matter.
As much as I
matter. And so that punctuality is something that was instilled in Jay, and then he instilled in our kids at a very early age.
Well, my father was a minister who was also in the military. And so, so we were always his motto, and he wasn't trying to be hurtful with this, but his whole thing was, if you're 5 minutes early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, you're rude.
Yeah.
And he wasn't trying to be, you know, a hater. What he was saying was everyone's time is valuable. So honor the people that you're with by being on time. And yeah, that was instilled in me. And, you know, Bill, you're a golfer. And if you've got a tee time at 9:10
Yep.
and you show up at 9:20, you're probably not golfing that day. You know?
Well, either that or you're joining your group on the second or third hole.
Yeah.
They've left without you. And
That's
I
right.
think they should. And I've done that to others before. I'm blessed through the work that I do to often get tickets to various sporting events. And in the era before they were all electronic, so pre-COVID, when there were paper tickets in your hand, if you were meeting friends at the game because you invited them to use some of the tickets that you were given, you had to say, all right, the game starts at 7 p.m. Let's meet at 6:30 out in front of the big Tiger outside of Comerica, whatever the case may be. And I am picturing a couple of occasions where I am sitting there and it's now 6:40 and it's 6:50 and my steam is rising. And now I can hear the anthem being sung. And then the game has started and I'm still standing out there. And then, you know, at 7:08, here they come along and I'm like, oh, was there a traffic accident? No, we just got kind of a late start. So that happened once. And the next time that it happened, I went into the game.
Sorry.
And I was getting phone calls in the third inning. We're here. Well, okay. Well, I'll come out after the inning, you know, and so thankfully now in the electronic era, you can send them and you just get there whenever you feel like it because I don't really care. But it just infuriated me. And not that I've never been late to anything, but I'm going to say this and probably be proven wrong by somebody, but I don't think I've been late to something I've been invited to as a guest because that's a kind of an extra level of rudeness. And I do think that our kids notice those things. My kids, thankfully, my son is very punctual. I haven't quite got my daughter all the way there yet, but they do notice those things. We are an on-time kind of family for the most part.
Well, and what you're doing is you're honoring the people that you're encountering.
Yeah.
And whether they know that or not is not the important aspect. It's that, you know, your character is such that you honor those people. And, you know, when you, again, you're modeling that for your neighbors, your friends at church, your kids, those kind of things stand out. You know, when someone can count on you to be there, that is a huge comfort and a huge piece of security in their life. That if Jay and Laura say they're going to be here to take us to the hospital or to do whatever for us at 7 o'clock, they will be here.
Yeah, we're not talking about those instances where an emergency happens or, you know, something unavoidable. We're talking about those people who are perpetually never on time.
Yeah.
To the point that you tell them you need them to be there at 6 o'clock, but you tell them 5:15 because they're perpetually late.
We do have a little conversion chart that we use for some of our friends.
Yes, we do too. And it was almost laughable because even his wife knew. We were telling him 30 minutes before we really want to get this thing started, we're asking him to be there. And his wife's like, thank you, because I hate being late to stuff. And he's always late to stuff because he's trying to cram one more thing in before we go. And so we started saying, hey, we're leaving at 6:30 when we really wanted to leave at 7 or whatever.
And that is a two-way street, right? So you could also have one spouse who is a very time conscious spouse and the other who is beginning to get ready while the other spouse has the car already running.
Right,
Exactly.
exactly.
So how do you counsel the couples who have a different value placed on punctuality? Because it can really create a lot of tension.
Well, I would say don't leave without the spouse. That's probably the number
I've
one.
heard of that happening. It happens.
I've heard
Yes.
of it happening.
Yeah.
I think it was a Raymond show. Everybody loves Raymond.
Yeah.
That he
Well,
left
that's
her.
fiction though, but
Yeah, I know, but still.
Based
It
on
is-
reality.
You know, I think in marriage, and this has to do with a lot of different things. You have to specifically say, we need to talk about this, and we need to not have any distractions. This is an issue for me in our marriage, and I'd like to get some sort of resolution, some sort of fair, equitable.
And a good phrase would be to use, help me understand why
You're always late.
you're always late, or help me understand why.
And if you don't want to be accusatory, help me understand why it's a problem being on time. Then you take the you out of that, because so many times the minute we hear you, it's like, oh, it's a personal attack. Why is it? Help me understand why it's a problem to be on time. And then you're not necessarily saying you're always the one, but they realize that you're always the one.
We used to
And-
have a policy in the Hobson family when I was a kid that if we were going to be late to church, we weren't going. And that was Dad's policy. We're not going to be on time. We're not going, which I thought was really helpful when it came time to go back to church for Sunday night. Because, if you just kind of dragged your feet just enough, back in that time, we were about 20 minutes away from the church. So, you really had to kind of get your act together in time to get in the car. And I would try the old, always at that time already. And, it never worked. We still went. So we had that commitment too. But yeah, the being on time thing says a lot about how you value other people. And you show that to them literally by your presence being at the appointed time. You guys run events all the time. You start those events on time. There's a countdown timer, and you can't hold up the entire room
Right.
because
Right.
4 couples are not in the room yet, right? You have to honor the presence of those who have carved out the time and made the priority to be there. In what I do in media, we start on time. We're on the air. We have no choice with all of that. So it's kind of ingrained or baked into my mindset. But in some of those other social situations, if somebody just says, "Hey, we're having dinner at 7," get there at 6:50.
Right.
Right.
You'll be
Don't
first
get
in
there
line.
at 7:18 because they've been waiting on you. They timed the meal to come out and all. So yeah, we do speak volumes through our punctuality. What's number 3?
Be practical. Be practical. I think this is probably the hardest one to codify, so to speak, the hardest one to identify, but form follows function. So in other words, what that means is if something's pretty, but it doesn't work, then it's useless. If something works, we'll make it as pretty as we can make it. And Laura and I have this.
I don't like this one.
She doesn't like this one because, things have to work in order for them to be pretty. And just because something's pretty doesn't mean that it works. And that's one aspect of practicality. It's the other one that this is just kind of one of my pet peeves is living within your means. I read an article this morning.
That's being practical.
That's being practical, living within your means. I read an article this morning that between the government debt and our personal debt that every household is carrying on top of the government debt, an economic crash is soon to come. And that's scary. That should put fear in everyone, because it's going to impact everyone. But to be practical, live within your means. And, maybe that means, you drive an older car, or you don't have the newest iPhone, or, stuff that we wish we could have. And for some people, those things are within their means, but to really be practical and say, is this something we can do? Is this something we can afford? Is this something that is worth our time?
Right. We were talking to a young father just the other day, and we were talking about toys and all the toys that all of our children that our kids had growing up. Our whole, at least for me, it was all about providing for my kids what I didn't feel like I got as a child.
Mm.
So I wanted them to have everything that they wanted. And that was just not practical. It wasn't, first of all, it wasn't financially smart. You know, and as we were
feasible.
right. And as we were talking about that, I was just struck by this young father saying, you know, I really want to give my kids experiences, not, you know, they can have this many toys, but they don't need as many as they have. They have toys they don't even know they have that haven't been played with in years. And so, you know, that really struck me as, you know, what can we give our kids that's way more practical than the next latest, greatest, you know, toy.
Yeah, and the
And
practicality conversation overflows directly into financial tension and stress, right? And because if somebody is living beyond their means, they're not being practical, and they are bringing to that relationship the level of angst that usually results in a lot of shouting and sometimes divorce. I mean,
oh yeah,
the financial factor is one of the leading factors of couples falling apart.
Well, I'm the queen of, I shop on Amazon, and if there's something, you know, we're like, oh, we need this, I go put it in the cart and then save it for later. So I have this whole cart on Amazon of save for later, save for later, save for later. And the other day I went through and went, remove, because I didn't need it. It was just stuff that I was like, you know, this would be fun to have. This would be, but I don't need the next latest, greatest kitchen gadget because I have this, the reason that I did it was because I've had a KitchenAid mixer for 20 years. And it has all these attachments. I asked for attachments right after I got it, but I also have a Cuisinart that can grate my cheese. I also have a hand grater that can grate my cheese. I have all these things that I've never used my KitchenAid to grate my cheese, and it's so much easier. I have all these attachments that do everything that I have all these other attachments for, KitchenAid appliances for, and I'm like, why do I have all this? Because I just wanted it, and it
Her
wasn't
middle
necessarily
name,
practical.
Laura's middle name actually is Laura. I want Laffoon.
True.
And we would argue about that till the chickens came home, whatever. And she's finally seeing how, yeah, you can want it and put it over here in the I want, but then let's wait 3 months, 6 months and see if you still want it. And if you do, we'll talk about getting it. And it's not like, you know, I overrule everything.
Too late, I emptied my Amazon later cart.
I'm sure you can relocate those items if you need
I'm
it.
sure I can find them again if I.
Now, there is one place where it's practical to get the shiny new.
Don't even say golf.
It's the golf clubs.
It is. I can't argue with that, Jay. I'd like to, but I can't. I cannot come up with an argument for that.
I got fitted for a driver. Someone said, how much did you pay? I said, it's not how much, it's how far. How far will the ball go with the new driver?
Right.
Well, with that, we will move on to the fourth fundamental.
Well, I'm reminded of a podcast I was listening to. One of my favorite social commentators is also a comedian. I will say this, he's extremely profane and he's an atheist. So I'm not, hear me, I am not recommending that you all go and listen to Adam Carolla. But I am going to tell you that he put the hammer right on the head of the nail, talking about the lack of practicality in our culture today and how one of the leading reasons for it, especially among young people, is because they don't physically handle currency anymore. They didn't go and mow 13 lawns to get $200 to go and buy the sneakers. All they did was Venmo something to somebody, and it's painless and there's no value put on the earning process. And we have this tendency to overspend or overextend or over desire because we really didn't put the sweat equity value on the exchange for this particular product, whatever it is, and how all of commerce boils down to a really simple question. Is what I want worth more than what I currently have? Whether it's a coffee at Starbucks at $6, is that coffee worth 6 of these dollars that took me at my job, took me 11 minutes to earn, whatever the math breaks down to in your hourly rate or however it comes down. And his theory is, and I think it's really well-founded, is that we have lost the grip on the value of what we've earned because we really don't see it. It's direct deposited, it's electronic, it's in Venmo, it's in PayPal, it's in Zelle, it's in whatever. And it just is this formless function that flies around. So it doesn't really alarm us when we overextend ourselves because yeah, there's a minus sign there, but I don't know, that'll go away, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
look at the resulting mess as Jay started the practicality conversation with talking about debt, both on a nationwide level and on an individual level. I don't think American families have ever been in more red ink than they are right now.
I agree. I agree.
All right, number 4.
Well,
Is to
we've done,
be
let's just recap to make sure we polite, punctual,
practical
practical, and the fourth one.
is purposeful. Work, live, operate with purpose. You know, it's a very similar to what we were just talking about, is that we do things that we don't want to do to impress people we don't like because we think that's what we are supposed to do. And the reality is, when you figure out the purpose that God has placed on your life, the purpose that God has for your marriage, the uniqueness of your marriage, to fulfill what only your marriage can fulfill. When you have that kind of purpose, you have something very few people have. Because when you have a purpose, you have the freedom to say the two most powerful words in the English language. It's the word yes and the word no. You say yes to the things that help us fulfill our purpose and no to the things that don't. And some of those things we say no to are good things.
And we have really seen how this has revolutionized marriages, because it's something that we do in our coaching program, which you can find more about on our website. We've taken couples. People don't think about, in your business, you think about, what's my business's mission? What is it that I want what is our business all about? What's the purpose? What's the mission statement? But you don't think about that necessarily. You might think about that personally, but you don't think about that as a couple, in your marriage, or in your family. And we have really seen that as we've offered this coaching to couples, that they're like, I never thought about what's our purpose as a couple. What is it that God has brought us together to do or to be? And then even taking that a step further, what's the mission for our family? What's our family supposed to be about? And when you start to think in those contexts, like Jay said, you begin to be able to say yes and no to the things that you need to say yes to and the things that you need to say no to. Because when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And that's just the reality of the words yes and the words no.
But it's free. I mean, it's absolutely freeing. It's much like the out of bounds on a football field. When you're in bounds, you're playing football and you're having fun and you're enjoying it. And it's the way the game was meant to play. Pardon me. When you have a purpose, it's like you have your boundaries set. And it's not that anything outside of the boundaries is bad. It's just, this is where we're called to play. This is where we're called to do things. And so that really is a powerful fundamental that takes intentional, thoughtful direction to really come to.
Well, and because what happens when you don't have those boundaries, when you don't have that purpose, and you begin to say yes to everything or no to everything. This is what happened to us. I was the yes person. I said yes to every opportunity that came along. Can you volunteer here? Can you volunteer there? Can you do this? Can you do that? I said yes, 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 yes. Jay, he was the no man. He said no to everything. So we were going different directions. I was doing all the yeses, he was doing all the nos, and we didn't have anything that we were doing together. And so we put ourselves through this process that we use in our coaching program, and we began to be able to say, you know what? Here's just a little illustration of how this worked. At the time we were beginning our marriage ministry, we were doing a lot of traveling. And so for me to say yes every time the church asked me to work in the nursery meant that every Sunday that I would be home, I was working in the nursery rather than sitting with my family in church. And so as our life evolved into that travel, I had to say no, because this is what we were about. We were about loving relationships. And that loving relationship meant that I needed to be in church with my family. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't ever volunteer in the church nursery, but I needed to do that on a much more limited basis than what I was doing during that season of life. And now, I usher at church every other Sunday because we're there and I can do that. And Jay does Kid Life check-in. every other Sunday because we can do that. You know, so seasons change, but your purpose kind of stays the same.
Good stuff. 4 points for everybody to keep track of and to put into practice. And if you've missed some of them during the conversation, they're also in the podcast notes, so you can go and grab those. And if you want some follow-up information, maybe some coaching or maybe some in-church presentation of what you just heard for a larger group, just go to jayandlaura.com for all that info, and you can make that happen. Good stuff. Thanks, folks. We'll talk to you again next week with another episode of Marriage Talk.